Hello everyone, welcome to episode 10 of HighSpeedFanatics, also known as Viewer Request 2, our second chance for you guys to send in your request for what you want to see in slow motion. Can you believe it's been 10 episodes already?
No.
It's crazy. But anywho, if you remember from episode 5, the first 5 things we did was a face slap, a CD snap, opening a shaken soda, the bottle cavitation trick, and smashing a glass bottle. So if you haven't seen those already, just go check out episode 5, then come back. But if you've already seen it, we're about to get to it. Okay, so one thing we got requested quite a few times was what?
Blowing raspberries.
Blowing a raspberry. That's something really simple, I guess, to do, but it looks kind of freaky in slow motion.
Actually, there's a lot of people that don't know what raspberries are.
Really?
Just demonstrate right now.
I don't want to.
Do it.
That's blowing a raspberry, and people want to see us do that. We're going to make fools of ourselves. Anyways, let's go do that right now. So, like I said, we're going to start with blowing raspberries. We're probably going to make fools of ourselves, but hey, that's what we're here for. So, we're going to line us up in the same shot, and on the count of 3 we'll do it. You ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. This first shot, we did a widescreen sort of aspect ratio to get both of us in the same shot. And this was filmed at 1,000 frames per second. Yeah, you can see we're both intaking right now to prepare for this super mega raspberry blowing. You can see that you actually started going before I did. And me. Oh my gosh, I'm clearly blowing much harder than you are.
Yeah.
I think yours is probably what most people's looks like, and I just blew way too hard. So let's actually take a look at each of us individually. Let's start with Grace.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, so we've got a shot here at 2,500 frames per second. This is of just Grace. Yeah, so this is 100 times slower than real time. And we can actually sort of see like how this is working and how this makes this sound. If you go back to before you start, you took your breath in and you're starting to blow it out slowly at this speed. But there's sort of like an attraction from like a little bit of saliva between your two lips, and so that sort of like makes them stay together just slightly. But eventually the air sort of breaks through it, and usually it breaks through right in the middle. So the middle part separates from it, and this causes the rest of the lips to disconnect until your entire lips are disconnected from each other. And then they fall back together, and it sort of repeats this again. And we just like this continuing process. And every time your lips hit each other, and every time your lip comes out, produces 2 different sounds, but put together create that effect. And here's my shot at 2,500 frames per second. Oh my gosh. You can actually see I'm blowing hard enough that my top lip hits my nose. It sort of bounces off.
And when your bottom lip hits like the top of your chin.
Yeah, my bottom lip hits right there. That's some funky looking lips right there. And so, what else do we want people see in slow motion?
Camera shutter.
A camera shutter. Specifically a DSLR shutter, which uses like a mirror that like flips up and down, and then we have like the sensor curtain and whatnot. That's a pretty interesting topic, so we'll go take a look at that. So now we're going to take a look at the internal mechanics of a digital single lens reflex camera, DSLR for short. And unfortunately the only one I have is this one, so sorry, but I'm going to have to take your lens off. So as you can tell, I'm using my secondary camera to record this footage. And so you see the lens is off of this camera, and inside you see a little mirror, and behind that is the sensor. So this is what happens when you take a picture. Now obviously that happened very fast, but you'll see that there's actually quite a bit going on that your eye just completely misses. Okay, so here's a shot of the DSLR shutter, and as you can see, I own the 60D from Canon. It's a great camera. And right there you see that lens is popping up, and the purpose of that mirror is when you're not looking at the LCD screen and you're looking through the sort of like iPort viewfinder, it sort of has to like bounce the lens down through like a pentaprism, I think it's called. And so we have the light coming in through the lens that should be here, and focus it onto the mirror bounces the light up, and then something else bounces it through that viewfinder so you can see it. But this is blocking the sensor right now. So first it has to get this mirror out of the way. And then we see this like sheet of black, which is I think called the curtain. And right there, you can see the curtain actually opens from the top down, fully exposes the sensor, and then there's a different curtain that goes top to bottom and closes it. And then the mirror falls back down. And while that mirror's down, it'll actually slide back up to the original position. But the length of time between when that first one opens and when the second one closes is known as the exposure time. And extra credit to anyone that can say in the comments what the exposure time was. Obviously this will include counting the amount of frames it takes to open. And this was shot at 2,500 frames per second, so keep that in mind. I'll have the answer at the end of the video if you just want to know the answer. So just keep that in mind so you don't accidentally stumble across that answer if you don't want to know it yet.
It kind of goes along with the next thing, which would be camera flash.
Yep, next one is camera flash. What I'm guessing people want to see is something that's happening rather fast, and watch sort of like the flash propagate over it, and to show like when exactly the photo is being taken so we can actually see that in action. So what I'm going to do now is take a look at the flash on a camera, and what I'm going to do is take a hammer and flip it in the air, and I'm going to have a flash go off sometime while it's in midair. And normally when you're trying to get a shot like that, you don't really know when that flash is going to take place, and so that's what we hope to see. Okay, so this was where we took the hammer, or I took the hammer, and spun it in the air, and we took a picture while it was in the air at some random given time. And so just watch this clip and see if you can spot anything unusual that you wouldn't expect. So, I don't know if you noticed, but there were actually 2 different flashes. And that's actually not something that, I guess I knew about it, but it's not something that I really was paying attention to. And the first time I watched this back, I saw this first flash here, and I was like, oh, that was pretty cool, we caught the flash. And then I saw this one, and I was like, wait a minute, what was going on there? And what I think this first flash was I'm not really sure what the name is, but it's sort of like an exposure checking flash, where the camera releases a little burst of light, and based off how the light is reflected back into the sensor, it sort of helps it calculate how to expose the photo. So when it shoots the actual burst of light for the flash, it can get a proper exposure. And if we count the amount of frames that this flash is actually being active, we get about 10 frames, which means that this burst was happening for approximately 250th of a second, which is pretty short, but at 2,500 frames per second, we sort of see the amount of time it progresses, where it quickly brightens up and then slowly fades back down, back until the photo has been taken. And if we take a look at the photo that was taken, we see that in fact the hammer was in this position when that second longer flash took place. And what's number 4?
Smashing light bulbs.
Smashing some light bulbs. Because what would this show be without some sort of destruction, right? Okay, so now we're going to smash the light bulb, and we're going to start with the incandescent bulb, and give it a good whack. You ready?
Yeah.
Alright, let's do this. Here we go, in 3, 2, 1, press. Here's the dead body of a light bulb. It's got a little arm going there. Oh my gosh. That's the filament right there. Little piece of wire. Pretty cool. Alright, now we're going to do the fluorescent bulb, CFL. This may contain some levels of mercury, but do not worry, we will dispose of it properly. 3, 2, 1, press. Oh no! We got one piece left. That's pretty cool, look at that. And here's when we've got to the destructive part of HighSpeedFanatics.
We started out smashing the incandescent light bulb, which is probably the most common light bulb.
Most common light bulb, yep.
And it's got a filament in it, and it's got this like round shape to it.
Yeah, I picked a clear one so we can see the fractures in the glass better and sort of see how the filament's being affected while this is being smashed. So we filmed this at 5,000 frames per second. So we're talking 200 times slower than real time. I must say, when I first smashed this, I don't know how well you could hear it in the actual shot, but this had a very distinct pop to it. Almost like a small explosion went off. And I think that's because of the way the air is pressurized inside of it. Whatever gas is in there to keep the filament lit longer is a higher pressure inside than outside, I think. And so when we cracked this and allowed air to be exchanged between the outside and the inside, that rapid change of air sort of gave like a pretty loud pop. Press. Yeah, you can see that if we watch this frame by frame, we have a frame where this is contacting it and sort of shoving it into the wood, and it's almost like flexing the glass. And glass seems super solid, but obviously here it's being bent a little bit. And everything starts to fall apart. We have a part down here that's being shot upwards due to the way the curved glass sort of bends like that. And then everything just falls apart. And so after the incandescent, we took a CFL bulb, which stands for compact fluorescent. If you've seen the long fluorescent tubes in buildings, this is obviously a more compact version of that. And how compact fluorescent lights work is it's filled with a conductive gas. And we have electrodes here and there. And what happens when electricity goes into it, the electrodes send electricity into the gas, and since they're conductive, all of those atoms of the gas can be excited. That's the actual technical term for it. And the electrons move up to the next energy state because it's being excited. But then when the AC current switches to the lower state, it has to get rid of this energy, so the electrons go back down and emit energy we see as light. It gives off a photon every time this happens. And so this alternating current causes this gas to excite, unexcite, excite, unexcite, and that's how we get this light. And then the last one is something more scientific, I guess. What would that be?
Plasma ball.
A plasma ball. If you haven't noticed, we've got one right here. How big is this? It's like an 8-inch diameter, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe, something like that.
I think so.
It's rather big. People want to see what those little plasma streams look like in slow motion, and just sort of mess around with it. So yeah, go do that last one right now. Okay, so here we've got our plasma ball with a black backdrop. High-speed camera right here. And you see here we have our Phantom software ready to record. So let's do this. So you can see when it's just sitting still, these little plasma streams are sort of random, but you can use your hand to sort of control how they move and make some interesting effects. Okay, so here is the plasma ball that right now obviously is on. A plasma ball basically works by having an electrode inside of this ball here, and as the voltage is put through it, it creates an electric field around it. And what happens is the gas that's inside of this plasma ball is conductive, and it wants to start moving these electrons from the ball to the nearest point that it can dissipate the charge to. And so it's surrounded by glass, and so in here where this electric field is being started, we see these like entrails coming off and basically conducting any of this charge to basically the closest point of contact that can make with anything. But since this is a sphere, there is no point, and so it goes off in basically very random directions. And as you see here, I have 2 fingers placed on the outside of this glass ball, and it basically allows a shorter path for these plasma trails to reach, and so that's why most of them are attracted to my fingers. And as you watch them skipping around, you'll see like sometimes it comes off, branches into 2 and goes to my fingers, but as that's moving around and it gets to this point, it sort of decides I'm at a point where I probably could find a shorter path of resistance, and so you see it switch. And so now it's coming to this finger and then branching off to that finger, and then it finds another way, branches into 2. And so it's a lot of like decision making going on. Not real decisions, but this is just completely finding different ways to dissipate this electric field. And in this shot I've got 8 of my fingers on the back of the ball, and you can see sometimes it thinks these fingers are closer, other times it thinks those fingers are closer, and sometimes those specific fingers closer, and then it just branches to the other one. But then as this arcs across, that one's closer, and then it sort of like moves over again, and it just finds different fingers that are, I guess, it thinks are closer, and uses that as the way to dissipate this charge. And what's producing this light and these arcs is the gas, just like the fluorescent tube. As electricity is flowing through the atoms, it excites it, and then it has to de-excite to get back to its original energy state, and it gives off a photon, and so we see these trails of light. And for the last shot, I did a close-up shot of my entire hand is on the top of the plasma ball, so all of this charge is being pushed upwards. And there's actually a point where you can see a plasma trail sort of coming off because the part down here thought the glass was closer than my hand. And you can see it right there, shoot off really quickly. But it's weird to actually see this thing travel. I thought it was sort of like an instant thing, where almost like electricity traveling fairly close to the speed of light, just being there and being there, finding a connection and just bridging that gap super quickly. Yeah, you can see all of this plasma-ish looking stuff finding its way up to this main route that is then traveling up to my hand and sort of heating up my hand because a lot of electric flow is moving and it starts to warm up your palm pretty quickly. Thanks for watching episode 10 of HighSpeedFanatics. This was the second installment of viewer requests, but for now, enjoy the next 4 episodes before we get to episode 15, which will be the third of viewer requests. So send in all your requests, anything you want to see, crazy stuff, simple stuff, whatever. But for now, subscribe, like our videos, share with your friends, leave us a comment if you want, send us messages, whatever you want. We'll see you next week, and enjoy our next episode.